I'm going to strip away the comforting illusions right now. What I'm about to share isn't the bedtime wisdom your father passed down. It's not the sanitized lessons your teachers repeated in school. And it's definitely not the narrative society wants you to believe. Most men will live their entire lives blind to this truth, and they'll go to their graves thinking ignorance was safety. But ignorance is exactly what keeps them weak, predictable, and controllable. Once you hear this, you can't go back. It's one of those truths that cuts your life in two: the time before you knew it and the time after. 5 centuries ago, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli put these dangerous insights into words. Insights so unsettling that the Catholic Church banned his book. Insights so sharp that kings, generals, CEOs, and presidents have studied them in private while condemning them in public. Why? Because Machiavelli didn't waste time with moral fairy tales. He wrote an operating manual for human beings, not the version we advertise, not the flattering image of how we wish humans worked, but the raw, unfiltered mechanics of how we actually behave. And here's the terrifying part. The elites of every era have known these rules and used them against you. In politics, in religion, in business, in your relationships. They've been playing a ruthless game of chess while you're still playing checkers. So why didn't your father tell you this? Why didn't your teachers? Simple. Because no one told them. Because each generation is trained to believe that piercing through illusion is cynicism, that strategy is manipulation, and that power itself is somehow immoral. That belief is the leash society puts on you. But let's be honest, ignorance isn't a virtue. Ignorance is weakness, and weakness is the scent that draws predators. Starting right now, I want to hand you a different lens, one that makes you dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of reckless violence, but dangerous in the sense of becoming someone who cannot be manipulated. Once you put this lens on, you will never see human behavior the same way again. So, before we dive deeper, do the ritual. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what I'm about to reveal doesn't just inform you, it transforms you. And transformation only happens if you keep going. Let's start with the greatest lie you've been told: that humans are rational, that we carefully weigh pros and cons, evaluate outcomes, and choose what makes sense. That's the myth. But the truth? We are profoundly irrational creatures, ruled by ancient instincts, emotions, and biases baked deep into our neural circuitry. Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. He wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel." Translation? We don't choose based on reality. We choose based on appearances, on illusions, on the story that feels right, not the truth that is right. Think about it. Your friend asks for advice on his toxic relationship, but ignores you the moment the truth hurts his ego. The coworker who complains about being broke, then happily drains his paycheck on Starbucks because the ritual soothes him. The woman who claims she wants a nice guy, but instinctively runs back to the man who keeps her guessing. What's happening here isn't logic. It's dopamine. It's fear. It's craving. Reason collapses in the face of desire. Logic evaporates when status, lust, or comfort walk into the room. Neuroscience backs this up. Our prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason, gets hijacked by the limbic system when emotions spike. You think you're making rational choices, but really, you're just building clever justifications for emotional impulses. And that's the game most people never understand. You've been taught to persuade with facts, to win arguments with evidence, to present rational cases. But facts don't move people. Feelings do. Cognitive biases like confirmation bias, anchoring, and loss aversion ensure that emotion trumps reason almost every time. The man who understands this doesn't argue. He doesn't waste time proving he's right. He makes people feel he's right. That's infinitely more powerful. Look at history. Hitler didn't hypnotize crowds with Excel spreadsheets. He weaponized fear, anger, and hope. Corporations don't make billions by listing chemical formulas for soda. They sell happiness in a bottle. Religions didn't conquer the world through Socratic debates. They spread through the terror of damnation and the ecstasy of paradise. That's why you lose arguments. That's why people ignore your advice. That's why influence slips through your fingers. Because you thought people were rational. They're not. They're addicts, hooked on emotions. So here's your first dark lesson. Stop trying to move people with logic. Start shaping their feelings. Want to lead? Don't tell people what's good for them. Show them a story where they feel like heroes for following you. Want to influence a partner? Don't argue about fairness. Make them experience the joy of winning you or the pain of losing you. Want to dominate in business? Forget data. Create a narrative that makes you seem inevitable, unstoppable, destined. The man who leans on facts alone is a lecturer. The man who masters emotion is a king. Once you realize this, masks start falling off. The politician's polished smile, the influencer's carefully curated brand, the co-worker's excuses. Every single one is designed not to reveal truth, but to protect feelings. And once you can see through those masks, once you recognize that beneath every action is an emotional hunger, a fear, a desire, you can pull the strings. And that's only the beginning. Because if humans are irrational, then the very concept of loyalty itself must be re-examined. Which brings us to Machiavelli's next warning. Beneath the surface of every polite interaction, every handshake, every smile, the world is divided into two types of men, predators and prey. That's it. The strong take, the weak are taken from. Strip away morality, culture, and politics, and you're left with this ancient law of nature. But here's the hidden cruelty. Weakness doesn't just fail to protect you, it attracts predators. Like blood in the water, it signals to the strong, here is easy prey. Think back. Why does the bully always target the quiet kid, never the fighter? Why does a corporation lay off the most passive employees first? Why does a woman lose interest in the man who bends, but cling to the one who stands unshaken? Because predators always choose the easier meal. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Not because fear is noble, but because fear protects you from wolves. Love without strength invites betrayal. Fear without love still commands survival. But there's a darker twist. Weakness doesn't just doom you, it poisons everyone around you. A weak man forces others to carry him. He drains the strong until they either abandon him or collapse under his weight. He becomes a liability, and predators never stop at him. Once they devour him, they move on to the rest. Weakness, then, is not harmless. It's contagious. Society will tell you otherwise. It will urge you to soften, to embrace weakness, to confuse vulnerability with virtue. But the man who cannot defend his family, his reputation, or his own mind isn't good. He's dangerous in the worst way, a burden. Strength isn't optional. It's the price of survival. Once you internalize that, every interaction shifts. Every moment becomes a test. Who's predator? Who's prey? Who sets the rules? And who follows them without resistance? That's why women chase strength. It's not just attraction, it's instinctive survival. That's why leaders rise, because people prefer to obey the strong than drown in the chaos of the weak. And that's the choice you face, predator or prey. Your parents, your teachers, even your friends may have told you the same story. Be nice, be agreeable, don't cause conflict, and people will like you. But Machiavelli shattered that illusion centuries ago. He wrote, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions." Do you see it? People confuse weakness for goodness. They mistake obedience for virtue. They think being nice is the same as being valuable. And that's why the so-called nice guy gets discarded, while the rule breaker gets rewarded. Nice is not the same as good. Nice is cowardice dressed as virtue. Nice is avoiding conflict because you're afraid of rejection. Nice is telling people what they want to hear so you can be liked. Nice is a desperate plea for approval, hoping for crumbs of validation. But good, real good, is something else entirely. Good is having the courage to speak truth when everyone else hides. Good is standing firm in principle even when it makes you hated. Good is refusing to bow to manipulation even when it costs you dearly. Nice men beg for acceptance. Good men earn respect. And here's the brutal twist. Women don't respect the nice guy. Bosses don't trust him. Friends don't follow him. Because niceness without strength is just weakness in disguise, and weakness repels. Look at history. Were Caesar, Alexander, or Napoleon nice guys? Hardly. They could be generous, merciful, and even charming, but always from a position of power. Never at the cost of strength. Look at modern leaders, CEOs, or champions. They're not nice. They're just fair, even compassionate, but they do not tremble at disapproval. They don't fear rejection. They don't chase approval. And that's why they lead. You can be kind without being weak. You can be good without being nice. But you can't be respected if you are weak. Strength paired with kindness is magnetic. Weakness paired with niceness is poison. So burn this into your mind. Stop trying to be liked. Start demanding respect. Because when it comes to human psychology, the worst fate isn't to be hated. It's to be ignored. Your father probably told you, loyalty is everything. Be loyal to your friends. Be loyal to your company. Be loyal to your partner. But Machiavelli saw through the illusion. His warning was sharp. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. Why? Because love is fragile. Love is conditional. Love is loyal only as long as it serves the one giving it. You've seen this with your own eyes. The friend who only calls when he needs something. The company that preaches we're family until layoffs hit. The partner who keeps her options open while demanding your full commitment. That isn't loyalty. It's exploitation dressed as loyalty. Most men never learn this. They think giving blind loyalty is noble. In reality, it's weakness. Loyalty without reciprocity isn't virtue. It's foolishness. And fools exist to be used. Think of the most powerful men you've known. Not the ones who pretend, but the ones who truly command their lives. Are they blindly loyal? Do they keep serving after betrayal, disrespect, or neglect? No. They are strategically loyal. They understand loyalty is a contract, not a religion. And the moment the contract is broken, so is their loyalty. Here's the truth. Loyalty isn't about being a dog who follows no matter what. It's about being a wolf who walks beside those who prove themselves and bares his teeth when they don't. History is littered with kings who trusted too much, only to be stabbed in the back. Leaders who believed love would protect them, only to be devoured by the same people who swore allegiance. And today, nothing has changed. Workplaces, marketplaces, relationships, it's all the same. Loyalty exists only as long as it serves an interest. So, how do you use this knowledge? Simple. Be generous with loyalty, but ruthless about withdrawing it. Test people. Watch how they behave when there's nothing in it for them. See who shows up in your storms, not just your sunshine, and never give endless loyalty to someone who bleeds you dry. Because a man who demands loyalty without returning it is a tyrant. But a man who gives loyalty to those who don't deserve it is a slave. And slaves always break. So here's your second dark lesson. Never waste loyalty where it isn't reciprocated. Because misplaced loyalty isn't noble. It's weakness. And weakness gets eaten alive. But this raises a terrifying question. If love is fragile, if loyalty is conditional, what actually protects a man? What shields him from betrayal, from exploitation, from being discarded the moment he's no longer useful? Machiavelli's answer was cold, but clear. Reputation. A man without reputation is already dead. He just doesn't know it yet. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Translation: it doesn't matter who you really are. It matters who they think you are. And here's where most men fail. They think authenticity means revealing everything. They overshare. They expose fears, doubts, insecurities. They cry about being misunderstood. And then they wonder why no one respects them. But the world doesn't reward the real you. It rewards the strategic you. Your reputation is your armor. It's the shadow that precedes you into every room. It's the myth that speaks louder than facts. With a strong reputation, enemies hesitate. With a weak one, even your friends doubt you. History proves it. Alexander the Great spread stories of being invincible, half divine. His enemies believed it before the battle even began. Steve Jobs didn't just build Apple. He built an aura, a reality distortion field that bent investors and employees alike. Compare that to the man you know who constantly explains himself, constantly justifies, constantly seeks to be understood. He isn't respected, he's pitied. Here's the dark law. Perception is reality. If you don't control perception, someone else will control it for you. Want to be seen as competent? Don't whine about problems, present solutions. Want to be seen as valuable? Don't be endlessly available. Scarcity creates worth. Want to be seen as powerful? Never explain your decisions to those who don't have power over you. This is strategic authenticity. Not being fake, but revealing only what serves your goals. Reputation is like fire. Leave it untended, and it dies. Let it rage uncontrolled, and it burns you alive. But when managed, it gives warmth, light, and fear. And here's the cruelest part. Once your reputation is cracked, it's nearly impossible to repair. A single betrayal, a single misstep can erase years of work. That's why you must guard your reputation more fiercely than your wealth or even your relationships. Because reputation is the passport to power. Without it, you're already exiled. But reputation alone won't protect you. There will always be people trying to destroy it. Rivals, enemies, envious pretenders. Which brings us to Machiavelli's next warning. There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others. Most men believe peace is the norm and conflict is the exception. Machiavelli knew the opposite. Conflict is always present, sometimes quiet, sometimes visible. The only question is whether you're prepared for it. Your life is a battlefield. In your career, someone is always watching for your stumble, ready to replace you. In your relationships, someone is always willing to take your place if you grow weak. In your social circles, someone is always testing boundaries, waiting to see how far they can push before you snap. If you're not prepared for war, you've already lost. The men who rise don't see conflict as a surprise. They see it as inevitable. They sharpen their weapons during peace so they don't bleed during battle. Amazon stockpiles cash long before crises hit. Nations build arsenals long before war breaks out. The disciplined man trains, saves, studies, builds alliances, not because he's paranoid, but because he knows the storm always comes. Machiavelli gave us the parable. The lion cannot defend against traps. The fox cannot defend against wolves. One must be both lion and fox, cunning enough to see traps, strong enough to crush wolves. Most men fail because they choose one. They're clever but weak. Foxes who eventually get devoured, or strong but blind. Lions who fall into traps they never saw coming. The man who becomes both is untouchable. Here's the dark law. Don't start wars, but be prepared to end every single one. Because the man who radiates readiness rarely has to fight. Predators sense strength and always choose easier prey. So forge yourself into someone no one wants to test. Train when no one is watching. Save when others spend. Study when others are distracted. Build allies before you need them. Prepare before the war arrives, because it will arrive. So far, we've shattered 3 illusions. Humans are rational. False. We're emotional. Loyalty is permanent. False. It's conditional. Peace is the default. False. Conflict never stops. Now we turn to perhaps the most uncomfortable truth of all. Morality is not universal. It's a weapon. You've been taught since childhood that good and evil are fixed, that morality is some eternal compass. But Machiavelli exposed the hypocrisy 5 centuries ago. He saw that morality is not a constant. It's a mask the powerful use to control the weak. Think about it. When the state wants soldiers to die for its cause, what does it say? It's your duty. It's noble. It's right. When a religion wants followers to obey, what does it say? This is holy. This is sacred. This is good. When corporations want you to buy, what do they say? It's ethical. It's sustainable. It's the right choice. In every case, morality isn't about truth. It's about leverage. It's the story used to make people obey without questioning. And the masses, desperate for certainty, cling to it. But Machiavelli warned rulers not to be trapped by morality. He said a prince must appear virtuous, but be ready to act viciously when necessary. Why? Because those who cling blindly to morality get crushed by those willing to bend it. History proves this mercilessly. The Allies firebombed cities in World War II, killing hundreds of thousands of civilians, yet framed it as justice. The U.S. dropped nuclear bombs and called it peace. Every empire, every revolution, every great leader has cloaked brutal necessity in moral language, and the masses believed it because people crave the illusion of righteousness. Now, before you think this is about politics, let's bring it back to your own life. How many times has someone framed their self-interest as morality? The boss who says, "We're family here," right before cutting your overtime pay. The girlfriend who says, "If you loved me, you'd do this," while manipulating you into weakness. The friend who says a real man would, right before asking you to sacrifice for his benefit. It's the same pattern. Morality as a leash. And the man who doesn't recognize it is the easiest to control. So here's the fourth dark lesson. Morality is relative. Never let someone else's version of it chain you. Instead, craft your own code. One that protects your strength, your survival, your mission. Follow it ruthlessly. And when necessary, don't be afraid to step outside the illusion. Because here's the paradox. The man who is seen as moral but acts with ruthless clarity is unstoppable. People trust him, follow him, even worship him, while he bends reality behind the scenes. Which brings us to power itself. What is it, really? Most men think power is money, or status, or control over others. But Machiavelli knew better. Power is perception. Power is influence. Power is the ability to shape choices without forcing them. That's why the strongest power is invisible. When people think they're acting freely, but every choice they make serves you, that's true power. When you can withdraw your presence and still bend the room, that's true power. And that's why desperation is fatal. The moment you need someone, the moment you chase someone, the moment you beg to be understood, you've already surrendered power. Look at the men you admire. Do they chase? Do they explain? Do they bend over backwards for approval? No. They create gravity. Others orbit them. They don't plead for loyalty. They command it by being too valuable to lose. Machiavelli wrote, "Men should be either caressed or destroyed, for they will avenge themselves for slight injuries, but cannot do so for grave ones." The principle? Never play halfway. Never beg. Never grovel. Act decisively. Either give value so clearly that people are bound to you, or sever ties so cleanly they never come back. This is where most men sabotage themselves. They stay in lukewarm jobs, lukewarm relationships, lukewarm friendships, bleeding slowly because they're afraid to be decisive. They want to be reasonable, to keep the peace, to not rock the boat. But in doing so, they destroy themselves by inches. Here's the fifth dark lesson. Be decisive. Half measures invite rebellion. Full measures command respect. This is why your reputation matters, why your strength matters, why your readiness for war matters. Because once you become decisive, once you radiate that you cannot be manipulated, cannot be guilted, cannot be chained by illusions, you stop being prey. At that point, something shifts. The world doesn't just respond differently, you respond differently. Opportunities appear where doors were once closed. People treat you as if you've been upgraded because in their eyes, you have. And here's where Machiavelli's final truth comes in. Fortune. He wrote, "Fortune is a woman. If you wish to keep her under, it is necessary to beat and ill-use her." Brutal words. But his meaning was clear. Fortune favors the bold. Life doesn't hand power to the cautious, the hesitant, the passive. Life bends to the man who seizes it with force, the man who risks, the man who acts. Look at every great leader, every empire builder, every revolutionary. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't tiptoe. They didn't pray for luck. They grabbed fortune by the throat and bent it. You don't need to be reckless, but you do need to act. Too many men hide behind preparation, planning, waiting for the right time. The right time never comes. What comes is decay, mediocrity, irrelevance. So here's the final dark lesson. Fortune rewards aggression. If you want a life that bends to you, you must seize it. Waiting is death. Boldness is life. And so, 5 centuries later, Machiavelli still whispers truths that society doesn't want you to hear. Humans are irrational. Weakness attracts predators. Loyalty is conditional. Morality is a weapon. Power is perception. Fortune rewards boldness. This is why his book was banned. This is why leaders study him in secret. And this is why most men die blind, because they were too afraid to confront these truths. But you're different. You've listened this far, and that means you're ready to step beyond the illusions. So remember this: knowledge without action is just another form of weakness. Take what you've learned, sharpen it, use it, because the moment you do, you stop being prey. You stop being controlled, and you start becoming something rare. A man society cannot manipulate, a man who writes his own rules, a man who is truly dangerous. Like the video, subscribe, and share this with the one friend who's still asleep before life devours him, because the wolves are already circling.